We'll be starting in just a minute, folks. Hello, good morning, and good afternoon, and good evening if you are in South Africa.
Hello.
Hi, Sherry.
Good morning.
Hey, Lee.
Hello.
Let's see. I'm going to make you a co-host. And we'll go ahead and open up the waiting room. All right. So today, well, I have to remember to hit the go stream live here. And we are now live everywhere that matters. So normally Chris would be in the spotlight here, but he had to take, I think it's an in-person meeting somewhere in Austin. And so whatever that is exciting. And I'll be, going through the deep end of one of the tools that we covered. My name is Segovia Smith. For those who don't know me, I am the COO here at Chief AI Officer. I see a lot of familiar faces on camera. If you're new to this call and you would like to show up and participate, it's nice to see a smiling face. You can turn your camera on. We're this was a last minute thing for me to swap out the session for today. But I feel like we can go deep on a subject which we covered on a Thursday call, and that was relating to browsers and what we can do to AIify, our internet experience overall. But before we get into that, I want to get a quick poll, and we'll wait for a few more people to kind of pop in. Does anybody have anything that they covered, during the week or the weekend, or anything that they just want to share? Any questions while we wait just for more people to come on? Any wins? All right.
I have one win.
Okay, go ahead.
So I
Terrence?
noticed that I'm getting the LinkedIn premium icon on my LinkedIn profile. And I'd paid for a couple months after my free month, but nothing really became of it. So I canceled it. And that was about, I don't know, a couple months ago. But I checked and my payment isn't going through. And if you dig deeper, it says I don't have premium, but I have the icon and I have all the benefits
Benefits?
that come along with it. So I'm not paying for premium, but I'm getting LinkedIn free. That's kind of a accidental windfall, but I'm taking advantage of it.
Excellent. We will not broadcast this all over the internet so they find you.
Oh
um,
wait, this does get broadcast all over
Yeah.
the
Oh,
internet,
this is
doesn't
no.
it?
I'm sure that LinkedIn is not watching. But suffice to say, I know somebody was actually announcing, and I don't remember what the feature was. They were saying in the community a couple weeks back that if you had a LinkedIn premium account for more than a year, LinkedIn was giving something away, an AI tool subscription. Anybody hear any of that? Do you know?
I think it was a year of perplexity.
It was Perplexity? I wasn't sure if it was Claude or Perplexity. So, that I think is an interesting, joint venture between, two titans, or at least one that's an up and comer, to say here it's proving more adoption and scale, because Perplexity we love, around here, and we're always teaching and talking about it. And if you're a premium subscriber and you're loyal, you've been in there for a while, it's certainly a good introduction, to the LinkedIn crowd. All right. Well, we seem to have gathered our people here, and so we'll go ahead and let me do a quick straw poll. Who, by a raise of hand or in the chat, just throw a number one if you attended the Thursday call that we did, which is a AI productivity call last week. It was the first in a series that we're kicking off. Okay, I'm seeing two people with a one in the chat. Anybody else on screen that I can see want to raise your hand? Say I was there. Lee, were you not there?
Hi, was that the one where we went over the white paper?
Um, no, I
That
don't.
was
Okay, then.
that was Chris's call. That
That
was
was
the
so that was a Thursday evening. I was talking about one that was in the morning at around 9 a.m. Pacific, noon
No.
Eastern time. Okay, so it looks like a lot of people. Somebody says, "What is this? One big blur?" I think so. Steve, am I showing up blurry, or what are you talking about? Or
No,
the whole
Steve's
week?
a
Oh, there's
blur.
just so much information
Oh,
and
the whole week is a blur. How do you even remember what happened?
one
What'd you eat
big
for
blur,
breakfast?
man.
Hey, Segovia, you should probably tell the people that sometimes you take these and post them on social media. So if you're on camera, you don't want to look like you just rolled out of bed.
Oh, did I not style my hair? Oh, my bad.
No, no, no. That was
I
when
catch you. I
you
catch you.
posted the graduate thing last week. My sister goes, "Did you just roll out of bed?" And I'm like, "No,
Nice. You have a very lovely family.
I do, but I just
Yes.
let
So
them."
let me actually open that up as a disclaimer. I don't know in terms of the notifications when you guys come on. The Monday and Friday calls, and then this Thursday, the one that I'm speaking of now, we actually have started to, as of a couple weeks ago, experiment with streaming them. So I will make a better job of announcing that at the beginning of the calls where we're live streaming. So for those who don't know, this call will be recorded, and this call is being followed by many bots and will be processed and sentiment analyzed, and it's being streamed out to 4 platforms that I know of: LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, as well as whatever the missing one is, YouTube. So yeah, if you don't want to be seen on camera, then just keep your camera off. The chat that goes on, I might read your questions out loud, etc. Disclaimer. So that's only on the Monday and the Friday, and then that one new series that we're kicking off on Thursdays. But thank you, good reminder. Appreciate that, Kim. So I do see some ones. I see about 4 people, 5 people out of maybe 20, 24, whatever we have on the call today. So I'm gonna just recap that because in the call, and we're kicking off these Thursday calls as a way to bring in through our advertising outside people who are brand new to the space, and kind of getting involved in the very early stages of AI. And so what Chris did, we kind of piggybacked off of the Saturday workshop where we do like a 2-hour workshop going deep into these tool stacks and answering questions for people. And so Thursday, what we did is we kicked off this new series about AI productivity. And one of the things that I think is really valuable when we take on, and I just finished onboarding a whole host of new certified chief officers in the making as they're enrolling in the program after the last 3-day challenge. And one concept that I always get into with people is how and where does this land in terms of how fast do you want to go, right? Some people, they're not employed, they're basically looking for work, or they're full-time entrepreneurs and they can dedicate the time and space in order to get through the program, and they can do it in a week. That's sort of the fastest, 7 to 10 days. But then other people, they're going to say 3 or 4 weeks as an average, and 3 months if they're only able to get a little bit of time to put away each week to move towards completing the curriculum. And so the narrative that I've started to shape and help people is like, you got to show up to these tool calls, because on the one hand, if you can't carve up 3 or 4 hours a week to learn, and whether you're trying to get the certificate program completed, or you've done the certificate program and now you need to stay up on learning AI across your role is to keep up with the times. That doesn't mean you got to spend 40 hours a week playing with tools. It means you got to actually keep up with the news cycles, understand what the models are doing a little bit, so that you can be dangerous and have some knowledge around what's coming up with the agentifying processes, and what's moving across the new up and coming different SaaS products that are constantly evolving and coming out on the landscape. So by focusing in on what we cover on a Monday, and this call is going to be kind of a deep dive on one specific tool. Thursday will be a little more of a 2-hour workshop where we can go through a couple different tools at once, and we'll keep doing that for as long as it's effective. But today we're going to be focusing on Arc, and Arc is a web browser. So how many people just just put Arc ARC in the chat if you're already using Arc? Did anybody that was maybe not using Arc start after they were on the Thursday call? And if you had any commentary, questions, or what have you noticed as a first user experience between the contrast of your previous browser, whether that was Firefox or Chrome or any other tool that's out there? Does anybody want to come off mic and say, if you played with it for a few days? Because I don't have the experience of a new user. I've been using Arc for almost 18 months. And so I kind of forget what that fresh new user experience is. Either Lee or Kim, I see that.
Sure, I'll drop in
Oh,
some
okay.
notes. I started using it because I saw you and Chris using it on your calls, and I was like, oh, what's that? Um, it's interesting. It's getting used to things. Having your kind of tabs on the left-hand side as opposed to across the top is a different mindset. And I'm still using Chrome, so I'm bouncing back and forth between the two of them. I got into trying it because I wanted to see how it was with memory management and if it would not be affecting or have as much impact on memory of my system. And I'm still not concluding that it's better than Chrome in that respect. I don't like in Arc. I've got a plugin in Chrome which wasn't showing up in Arc for some reason, but I'm on a PC, so if I right click on a link, Chrome opens up a new tab for me and goes to that tab. And in Arc, I have to right click on it, get the menu that says open this up in a new tab. It opens the new tab, and then I have to go to the new tab. So there's more steps happening in Arc for me, and I was gonna run that by you, Segovia, since you're kind of a power user more than I am. But that's my initial assessment of it. Happy to answer any questions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Kim, did you want to share any?
Yeah, sorry, I was having a problem getting off mute. You know what? I've used it a little bit like Lee. I'm experimenting with it, but I have to tell you, I've kind of gone completely over to Perplexity. So I sort of feel when I'm doing internet browsing that Perplexity has been meeting my needs. I always tell people it's the 180 view of what you're used to. But I do like it. I think for the Mac, because I was playing it on my Mac the other day and it seemed to be much easier to use browser. So I usually am on a Windows PC. So
You're usually okay. So cool. We have one question. Thank you, Kim. Andrew's got his hand up. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, so that Kim goes right into my question there. I wanted to ask you, Segovia, first. Are you on a iPhone or are you on an Android device? What type of user are
I'm
you?
all Mac, so iPad, iPhone,
Okay.
and
Okay.
Mac. But I
So
do
this
know
is
that I in terms of Arc on a mobile device, I don't use it on mobile at all. I only use it on the desktop, and I'm on a Mac. But I know people like they just launched the PC version. I think there's some of our staff that are using PCs. One of them couldn't use it because they're on an older operating system. But if you're on the latest Windows operating system, it should be fine.
yeah. The reason I ask, and then Lee, are you an Android user and Mac or Mac user?
I'm a PC Android user. I'm not using Arc on my mobile. I
Okay.
haven't even played with it yet.
Kim, how about you?
not using it on my mobile.
Are you an Android or Apple user though?
Oh, I'm Apple, iPhone.
Okay. So it's just, I'm kind of looking at it from a marketing standpoint, right? On the user, type of interaction. So it seems like it's developed more for the Apple user on that side of the brain. The individuals that are a little bit more creative and they can flow with that left column, I think. Yeah. And it makes sense to them. But for guys like Lee and I, we're just like, what does this look like? You know what I mean? So it's a little bit, it's not as intuitive to our brain, right? And to the way
Yeah,
we think.
certainly. I can speak to that a little bit. So, Steve, I'll go to you in a second. So when I actually started using, let me just talk about where I come from. So I am a tabaholic. Okay, I go to the Apple store and I buy the fastest computer that they'll sell me. I'll soup it up with as much as they'll put under the hood, because nowadays you can't like upgrade it after the fact. They kind of solder it down. So I'll max it out with the RAM and everything, and that's all purely based on, like, I'm not doing high end graphics. I'm not doing 3D animations or editing video, where some of those guys, they need to have like really heavy CPU cycles. And this is post or in a pre-AI space where you didn't need to be running LLMs locally on your computer. But for me, I would honestly have 200 tabs open at any one time across probably 8 different spaces in the Mac environment, and overlapping in all kinds of cascading ways based on work projects and so on and so forth. And it would pretty much come to the point where I would eventually, after a couple of weeks of running my computer, it would just die. I would, that would be the forcing function to reboot my computer, is I've just opened 240 and it just took a dive off a cliff. And so one of the things that I liked about one of the features Arc offered is the ability to set a close my tabs. A lot of browsers will do this nowadays, where they'll basically take the tab and say, I'm going to put it to sleep, if you will, and render it so it's not actually taking up CPU cycles. If you look at the back end of your computer and you see what's taking up stuff, it'll kind of go to sleep and not load content on the page. But then you still have all these tabs to worry about. And I don't like to spend time cleaning up. So even though it's not necessarily AI, but it's a function of logic that says I can set that to, in 24 hours, if I haven't touched a tab, which to me is too tight a timeline, but you could just say close all my tabs, because I don't want to wake up tomorrow to the same mess that I started today. In my universe, I will say, change that to say 30 days. If I haven't touched a tab in 30 days, like you said, what were we doing last week? Who knows? If I haven't put my finger on that tab and reactivated it, it can just disappear in the waterfall. If I ever need to find it, I can look in the history. So that's one function that I like. But just to kind of speaking to what Kim said, I don't know that I would consider, Arc versus Perplexity. Perplexity is more like Perplexity versus Google, right? There are 2 search engines, and one is, more AI powered and answering your questions. We all know, we've been talking about Perplexity for a long time. Arc has the ability, I'm sure more browsers are doing this, but Arc has a default, or you can change the default browser to be Perplexity as your search, so that you can just key in, type Command T, or in a PC world, Control T, which brings up the tab bar, and a search spotlight bar is what they call it. And it'll allow you to just, quickly type in a sentence and boom, you got Perplexity. It's already done. It saved you a few clicks. So there's some areas there. AI as a browser, let me just say, we all use the internet. And for those who are on Thursday, you'll hear this repeated, but for everybody else, we all use the internet every day. I mean, the vast majority of everything I do on my computer is actually through the lens of a browser window. There's some things that I do that are application specific, like I'll be doing Slack, but even Slack can be done in a browser. So when we think about a browser, it's a tool we all take for granted, that it's just ubiquitous and we just use it. And, the browser races from, the early days of Netscape and then Internet Explorer and all the other things that have come afterwards. Right now, it's pretty much, you're either Chrome. If you're a native and you didn't explore alternative browsers on a Mac, you're just defaulting to Safari, or your Firefox, right? And there are a couple other edge case browsers that people use. I'm not going to go into the list of like the 20 weird browsers that nobody's ever heard of, but there are some other ones that are out there. I find, what Arc has done, and let me just actually share my screen just to show their homepage. And I popped a link in the chat for an invite if anybody wants one. Usually you can just go to arc.net and get an account. But they have really taken the browser and rethought it from the ground up. And I'm a Chrome user for the last at least 8 years, and I like the features. I've used a lot of different extensions and things within Chrome. So because Arc is built on top of Chrome and they've just redesigned the UI as an application layer, it plays with all the things that I already do. So the idea with the side, to kind of speak to Andrew's thing about left brain, right brain, I also found, I had probably 10 years or more of tabs across the top. And so switching to that, oh, now I've got this stuff on the left side. What am I going to do with this? It kind of feels weird. It did take a little bit of getting used to. Yeah, I'm a Mac guy, but I think ultimately it felt kind of, I don't know, not junky, but more text, more words, more things over there, filling up the real estate. But at the same time, when I look at my problems, I was using tabs and I couldn't even read them because I'd have so many open that it became just the icons. And you can pin them and so forth. When I'm presenting, I can actually make this disappear. Let's see what happened there.
It worked.
It worked. Okay, there's just something else that's in the background. Let me see what that is. Let me get rid of that. All my browsers just wanted to jump into my screen view here. So we'll just shorten this.
So Segovia, while you're doing that, so the other thing though that when I was researching Arc versus Chrome is Chrome integrates better with the Google platform right now. I mean, you got to look at the ecosystem you want to integrate with. So I think Arc, like for the Mac users, the creative people, Steve, to your point, this is really good. And it has a lot of great things. So I appreciate it. But I mean, I guess you also have to look at what ecosystem you want to integrate with, right?
And I was going to ask, what's the main reason to look at this type of browser? Like way back when Focus came out, which, automatically forgets and clears your cache whenever you're done using it. So if you want to spy on people and not remember stuff, whatever, it's a good thing to have. But it's the Firefox product. That's all it is. So what's the real Benny to this? Is what I'm trying to understand.
Well, okay, so maybe I opened up too many Q&As before I actually showcase what the tool can do.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
So, Ren, I don't want to not take your question, but if you want to add a little flavor, and then I'm going to get into a little showcasing of what I find is powerful within Arc. So go ahead.
Sure. So you said it was built atop Chromium, but I've noticed sometimes browsers that do that. For example, I was a long-term Opera user, which is also built on Chromium. And sometimes web forms just do not work, and they don't work with Firefox, and I have to launch Chrome in order to actually complete stuff. So I was wondering if you've encountered that problem with Arc.
I have not encountered anything at all that would send me running for the hills with Arc. In 18 months, even out of probably 30 or 40 plugins that I've used, extensions, they've all worked without any issues. Doing all kinds of weird, tricked out stuff that Chrome was doing for me before. So I actually don't put as many. I find that I didn't migrate all my extensions over. I took some of them, the ones that I actually really need to use on some regularity, and then the 80% I just left them on Chrome. And if I need to use that like once a month to do some report or whatever, I might just open Chrome up and do that. But let me say I have not run into any of the issues that you've maybe seen with Opera.
No, I mean, yeah, and it's Firefox is even worse sometimes. Like you have a form to fill out on a website and you can't even fill it out because whoever built the website apparently didn't think about that, which to me is just shocking. But I was just I know Firefox isn't built on Chromium, but I've had those issues with Opera too, where it's just like, seriously, I have to launch it in Chrome in order to complete this thing on a website. So I was just wondering if you had a similar experience with Arc.
None at all. Let me say where, as a product manager, right, I look at the roadmaps of companies. What are they doing, right? How are they? I don't want to just switch browsers. Switching browsers is like trying to switch almost like a switching operating system. Going from, PC to Mac, whenever I did that, 10, 15 years ago, whenever the first iPhone came out, I mean, that was a major uphill learning curve, switching all my keyboard strokes, command versus control, et cetera. It's not your brain gets wired into certain things. And so switching a browser, it's almost like switching an operating system to some degree. But when we look at the product roadmap of what they're doing, they're trying to reinvent how we interact with browsers. And I like that principally. Like as opposed to just everybody doing things and continuously adding layer and layer and layer of stuff, they come from sort of a Mac thinking background, which is Apple people and Steve Jobs. It's all about, get rid of the UI. Like you don't need as much stuff just cluttering everywhere. So I like that principle, but most importantly, in the context of where we are as chief AI officers, and as we look at, finding ways to be more efficient, The browser is already onboarding lots of new AI features that are embedded natively or working with different tools and things like that. And that I don't see as often. Maybe I've just been focused over here and not looking over there, but tell me if somebody knows, oh yeah, Chrome's doing all kinds of cool stuff with AI now, which is native to Chrome, not via an extension of sorts. So just to show around a little bit here, just to give you the broad strokes. So the browser has a sidebar, right? You do still have a URL address bar. It's not at the top. And as you saw, when I get rid of this, either by pressing Command S, there's my sidebar. I can move those away. If I scroll down here, you can see they're showing the same element. Let's say here, this section, there's at the bottom, they have spaces, which I like to answering kind of your question, Kim, or for, I think, Terrence, you were asking something about this recently. How do you have multiple Google? Because so if you're all in on Google and you want to have multiple versions, you got your work Google, you got your life, Google, you got your business A or business B or whatever, personal stuff. You can actually sign in under these different spaces to different Google accounts, which is very convenient. You can color code them. I've got this one with a dark background. I've got another one over here with like a pink background, depending on the context of what I'm working in. So down at the bottom, I've got a default, I've got tasks, I've got, stuff for book publishing, business projects, project management, product management, etc. So each of those spaces can kind of be customized. And then you'll notice this thing's kind of annoying with its animation, but there's a line that's drawn right here. So I don't actually, I've never been a person who uses a lot of favorites and bookmarks. But these kind of work similar to the way you'd think of favorites and bookmarks. But you can organize them in a similar type fashion. And then there's the tabs that show up below. And, if this line basically separates the stuff you want to keep and you're working on frequently, projects or, stuff you need to do every day. And then down below is the stuff you're just opening up. You're reading a news article, clicked on a link in Slack and it popped it open. And you can quickly, it's only the tabs that are below this line that you can set up these cleanup rules where it's going to automatically close them over, if you haven't touched the tab in 7 days, and you can set that rule to whatever you want. I just happen to set it to 30 days. The fact that you can change all the colors and tweak things, it's window dressing. It doesn't really have that much functionality. But I will say that there's a way to go in up here. This is where you'd access extensions. They have something, let's see if you can, it's called Boost. And you can use these Boost things to actually creatively change a website. So for somebody who has a hard time reading, if you read the New York Times or you read, Huffington Post and you don't like their font and you want to make it larger, you can actually change it so that every single time you go to that website, you've upped their font size by 5 times the size. You've put it in a more readable, font, etc. So that allows you to change color schemes, especially if you have somebody who is maybe colorblind or different aspects like that. Now, we're not really getting yet into AI. I'll come to your question in a minute, Andrew. Just want to acknowledge that you have your hand up. So the other thing is, in terms of how AI is working, that you can actually do a search on a page, and I've got an article up here just to show as a reference. So here's, just randomly, I found an article about Arc and what it's doing. But you can normally on a PC or a Mac, you can hit, Control or Command F, and you can search for something. If I search for Spotlight, actually, let me undo that. So I'll say Spotlight, and it'll highlight. I mean, we all know how to do this. This is browser 101, right? It goes down the page and it looks for something, and you can then page through the 5 examples of that word. There are times where you search a page and it doesn't actually have what you're looking for. But within this, if I hit enter again, actually, I think let me try this, Command F. Okay, so I've now put in a sentence, right? Which is me, I'm going to use AI on top of this article. It's TLDR. I don't want to read this article. I'm doing research and I want to know, is this even something that's worth my time? So I can ask a question of the page. How does the Spotlight feature work? And then I can click ask. So this is now invoking the equivalent of, and I honestly don't know, I haven't pulled into the weeds to say, is this using ChatGPT or is it using a different LLM? My guess and my money would be it's probably using, ChatGPT's OpenAI layer, and it's now going to search the page, the context, find the answer, and give me a result back. So it feels a little bit like I'm using a Perplexity or an LLM to ask questions of a page. And so it doesn't matter if you're on a web page or if you happen to be, I just dragged a PDF into this, as a browser tab. If I downloaded a white paper and it's 50 pages long, I can start, interacting with it natively within the browser. Of course, you could take that same white paper, copy it, download it, copy the URL, paste it into a chat conversation, and go to your LLM of choice. But this is another layer that's natively built into the browser. Let me just pause and I want to address Andrew if there was something you wanted to throw in there and then keep going.
Yeah, I just to be devil's advocate here. Isn't this more like an app though than a browser since it's using Google Chrome, right? It's the same results. And so it's a reader organizational tool with an AI overlay to give you suggestions and recommendations and things of that nature, right? I mean, is it really a browser?
It's a browser in that, it's a browser as much as Chrome or Firefox would be a browser. Do you know what I mean? It's different enough, I find, from how their approach to doing things that it's not Chrome. It has Chrome baked in under the hood, but the entire UI stack and some of the things that they're doing natively are, I mean, what is a browser? A browser is an app. You know what I mean? It's an app into a window into the internet. So in that context, yeah, every browser is an app. When you launch a browser, you have to go to your, on a Mac, you go to your dock and you open it up. You go to your, applications or whatever on a PC and you launch the browser. So you're launching Arc. You don't need Chrome. This becomes a Chrome replacement.
I see. I see how you're looking. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so another thing about the side is you can turn, if I go in and say, pull up preferences, I'll just show this a little bit. So let's see. General, if you go under manage your default search engine, this is what I would recommend because we talk so much about Perplexity. Lee, keep an eye on the chat. I see there's a bunch of stuff in there and I'm not looking at it at the moment. So you can bring those to my attention if there's anything urgent. But right here, default, it's going to say Google. We all, I would recommend, I mean, if you're drinking the Kool-Aid on AI, you're probably, in the same camp as me. We're using Perplexity more. I throw the slang around. Hey, did you plex that? So Perplexity is a great, search engine for finding the answer as opposed to, Chris likes to say, it's like you don't need to go to the library, ask the librarian for what shelf and where, and then direct you over there. It's like show up to the library and say, the librarian is going to do all the work for you and give you all the results you need. And if you want to, you can say, let me just pull that book for a reference. So I find Perplexity is a nice way to switch the default here. And as I mentioned before, earlier, you can set up multiple profiles. So if you wanted to set up an additional profile signed into a different Google account, you could have, one space that is work Google, one space that is, personal Google. So there's a lot of little things you can kind of create that are customizing it. Now I'll show you the settings in a minute, but let me just go in and say, again, thinking about where this, came from. It came from a Mac app first, but they have something called a Spotlight bar. And on a Mac, you also have something called Spotlight Search, which is on a Mac, I think it's Control Space or Command Space. Yeah, Command Space pulls up a way to search through your entire computer. In this browser and even in like Perplexity, I think it's Command K. If you're on Perplexity, it pulls up like a little bar that allows you to operate and, do things within Perplexity. In this case, it's Command T. So I can start to type a search into here. I'll just put in the same sentence I used before. How does the Spotlight feature work in Arc? Okay. And now if I hit enter, it's going to pull up based on my default as opposed to just pulling up Google. It pulls up Perplexity. It automatically transposes that search, hits enter for me. I didn't have to like paste it in and click anything. And it's giving me the response back. So that's a nice feature to just superpower, your Perplexity with a browser. Again, I have been doing this for 18 months. I do not know whether Chrome is plugged in right now with setting up Perplexity as a default. But given the nature of things being, hey, Perplexity is going to eat Google's lunch, and they're a competitor. I would guess that Chrome probably wouldn't just be saying, yeah, let's make our competitor an option that's so convenient. You might be able to do it with an extension or something like that.
Hey, Segovia.
Yeah.
So you can have multiple, like, multiple Gmail accounts, there multiple profiles. You can do the same thing with Arc.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I would go into this settings area and set up a default profile
Definitely.
and log into one. And each of these down here, you can see these little sections. These are spaces, they call them. And so
Yep.
you'd be able to go into each of those and change them. So mine are more based on work context than they are. But if I was signed in to my personal side on the default and the tasks, and then the work side over here on product management and business projects, then you can manage your Google profiles that way and stay signed into. Otherwise, the alternative on a Chrome would be like open up one and then open up the second, and
Yep.
next thing you know, you got like 5 different
And-
cascading browsers.
Yeah, and then they end up confusing each other on which one you're actually signed into, so things don't work.
Now I'm sharing my screen. Oh, it doesn't work. I'm sharing one window out of 3, but on a Mac, right? I hit Command Tab and it pulls up all the open applications that I have, and I can quickly switch between those, applications if I want to jump between Chrome and Firefox, or Spotify and Slack and WhatsApp. I can switch between all these. Inside, when you end up running a lot of tabs, which I do, and this may not be a problem for everybody, you can, again, Command T does a lot more than just, okay, I can search and it saves me from a few clicks going to the search engine. I can also just switch tabs. So I could say, type in prompt, and it's going to say I can either go to Prompt Vault Studio and open a new tab, or I can search for the word prompt, or it recognizes that I've got another tab. And you see on the right over here where it says switch tab, and it'll instantly just switch me into that other tab. So when I'm moving across a landscape of 100 or 200 tabs, it's very easy for me to use it like as a quick search and switch as I move around. The other thing that's interesting, and I'll show this as an example, is, and I know different browsers are capable of doing this, but in the top right, there's a way to add a split view. You can do it both side by side, or you can do it vertically. I tend to have very large, wide real estates, so I go side by side more than I go vertical. And what I've done down here as an example is I've set up a split view. This can be customized. So if I'm going to run, maybe prompting, which you guys on my Tuesday calls, I'm often, talking about prompting and prompt engineering. And, we're talking about using Prompt Vault to optimize prompts. If I want to run a ChatGPT session on the right here, I can do that while simultaneously, optimizing and tweaking my prompts. And then I can just hit copy, paste it down here, and run a session of Claude or whatever I want side by side. And this can be done multiple times over. Like if I wanted to add another instance, I could just drag it in, and now we're going to have a 3-way split. So maybe I wanted to run Prompt Vault in one, Chrome in another, or other Perplexity or ChatGPT or Claude simultaneously. That kind of defeats the purpose of why we have the ability to use multiple models, but there is use cases where you want to actually have conversations in parallel down these, because you're trying to measure and weigh the output of a model against the working dialogue, not just the single one-shot prompt that you'd get in the way Prompt Vault Studio is configured. So again, you can detach these, you can undo that split view. There's, if we go back into settings here, under this Max section, these are kind of some of the power tools. You just toggle them all on until you try out the ones you like and which ones you don't like. There's one I don't particularly find it useful for me because I like to know where I left things. But there's a way to kind of use this tidy tabs, which will organize your tabs for you. There's another one that does tidy titles, which will take the titles and it'll actually use AI to, when you bookmark or basically add something up into the top layer above that horizontal line I was referring to, it'll rename the tab from something that might be just an SEO title that's not that useful to something that's more context relevant to the page. You can also just rename the tabs if you manually just right click on them and name them whatever you want to. Here's this ChatGPT in the command bar. So again, thinking in how are we using AI in this level. So I like to keep this one on. It says add ChatGPT to your search suggestion and start typing ChatGPT, hit the tab, and then ask a question. So you saw the way I just type in anything I want. Let's just go back to Command T, say, I don't know, what is a CAIO versus CIO. Okay. So I've simply Command T, hit enter, and it puts me into Perplexity because that's my default search. But the way that this is configured, I basically get a 2-for-1 because I can type in Chat GPT and then I can hit tab. And now it switches, it does this little magic animated thing. And now it shows me the green Chat GPT. And now I can put in, again, I could write anything that I want to. I'll just repeat the same question and hit enter. And now it's going to invoke Chat GPT. So it's almost like I'm getting Chat GPT as a secondary default search engine with an extra, it's like saying, I don't know, I want to go to Harry Potter reference. Wingardium Leviosa. Okay, ChatGPT, do this for me. So I kind of get the power of both Perplexity and ChatGPT within 1 or 2 keystrokes, which I'm using all the time for everything that I do. So that in and of itself is very useful. And then I set up some more power things that let me be able to type in whatever's on my clipboard, comma GPT. It automatically pastes it and forwards it and does some other things that I don't know why it didn't work there, but I'm not going to troubleshoot the issue. I was using text expander. Let's just go back to here and see if there's anything else. Oh, I like this one, 5-second previews. So if I go, let's go way back to the old days. Let's go to Google. Oh, I remember the day. Google, let's type in the same result. So I don't know if your browser can do this, but I can, in Arc, if I hover over something for a couple seconds, it's going to take me to the page, render it out, and allow me to view that. And say, I don't have to actually click on any of these results. I can just kind of get the synopsis a little deeper, which again, it's small, but all these small things begin to add up. We talked about this one, ask any page, press Command F on the page, ask a question, and it'll basically answer it using AI, which is likely a ChatGPT layer. And there's a bunch of other stuff. There's pinned tabs. So up here, so this is all the stuff that I have above the line. And then way down here, there's my line. Okay, so these tabs down here, I could hit clear and it'll just wipe out all this stuff. This is the stuff I haven't, I've been working on, but haven't maybe gone into in a couple days. And then somewhere at the bottom of here is going to be the 30 days. At the top, you can pin these. And depending on how many you're pinning, the icons get a little bit larger. But these are quick things that you want to move around. And if you switch between spaces, if I go, space 1, space 2, space 3, you'll notice that this top portion is never changing. So I've got some stuff pinned up here, Prompt Vault, Perplexity, ChatGPT, Gemini, etc. So you can pin anything you want at the top layer. There are other Chrome extensions that I would often use that I no longer need, is taking a screenshot of the entire page, all the way. If I'm on a long page and I don't want to take a screenshot of only what I can see, there's an ability up here by clicking capture the full page. You can, of course, do screen captures where you can drag. Either it'll highlight automatically certain div containers, or you could just say, I want to grab an area of interest and take a screenshot. All of those can be either saved to your library, downloaded, forwarded, put into easels. I'm not going to get into that, but you can play around with some of that stuff over here. And you can see your download section, spaces, etc. So let me pause there and see if anybody has any questions.
How did you get the copy screen icon, the camera?
So I moved my orientation to have, I think if we go back over here, if your default setup is going to be, you're going to see this address bar where you would normally type in. So I don't actually have that address bar in my user interface because I don't need it. It just takes up annoying space, and I just Command T for everything. So, but if you do still have that, it'll be this little icon that shows up right there.
Mm-hmm.
And in my case, I have it up on the side over there.
Got it. Thank you.
Another thing is if you're on a web page and you like Command T would open a new tab. But if you just want to know what's the URL of the page I'm on, it's Command L, and that'll like show you, okay, that's the URL for the page that I happen to be presently on. So if I go back to, let's say, that article, right, and I hit Command L, now I can see, the address bar, and I can go, okay, that's the address. And maybe I'm messing around with a query string, trying to put an affiliate link on something. I can, do that, or I can just copy the whole thing. When it comes to copying, so here's another little sweet feature that I use all the time. And when I switch into Chrome, I start using these hotkeys and they don't work because they're not there. So rather than having to go Command L, that's one set of keystrokes, it automatically highlights it. And then I'd go Command C, and now I can go and paste it into a Slack channel. I do that like 100 times a day, right? Whatever I'm doing or whatever I'm on, I'm going to just, shoot that over to somebody else. I don't know if this is the default configuration of short keys or if I've customized it, but I do on my Mac Command Option, which is kind of like Alt on a PC. So it might be Control Alt, but Command Option C. That was not it. Okay, that was a code thing. What is it? Command Option Shift C. And you can see in the top right, it says copied URL. So with just that quick, it's almost like, okay, Command C would copy, Command Alt Shift C, and it's going to copy that. And now I'm one click less. And you might go, well, this is crazy. Like you're doing all this and you're saving one click. My philosophy for the last 15 years is if anything I can do to save 7 seconds, it's worth me, understanding how I can repeat that, because 7 seconds, 100 times a day, times all my team, if they're all saving 7 seconds, we start to shave. And some of this may or may not be invoking AI in every case, and it may not be an automation, but it just becomes, the way in which we use the tools that we have. And I find that this tool is, far more convenient to my workflow. Another little a feature that I like is if I was to say, okay, here, let me close one of these down. And let's just go. I've got Arc, the browser, the article. Okay, let me just take these at the end of a session. If I'm doing a demo, let's say contextualize this. You're a chief AI officer, you're talking, maybe you're fractional, you're out there in the wild and you're talking to a customer or a prospect and you're doing a demo. First of all, when we're doing slide presentations and demos, I generally like to only share my browser, not my whole screen. I'm sharing a portion of my screen just so I can flip between multiple windows. But having that, move the tabs out of the way, and now the only thing that's being seen, there's no messy, tabs on the side. Nobody needs to see, my dirty laundry of what I'm up to. But sometimes in a demo, I will actually preload some tabs up here, and I will create a workflow that says over the next half an hour of demoing this particular AI for my prospect, I'm going to go through in this order these tabs. And at the end of that demo, I can right click on them and say, I'm going to go share 5 items. Okay. Right click. Now it says copy link to folder. And I don't want to say never. And so now that automatically goes on my clipboard. If I was to open up a new tab and paste in that ARC folder, this is the folder that it's created. And I will go ahead for the sake of training here, and I'll pop that in the chat. And whether you are on Chrome or you are not on Chrome, you'll be able to pull this up and access the same exact links that I have. So that's a nice way to end a conversation, right? We all have a note taker, it's summarizing, it's sending out, to-do lists for people, but as a convenient thing to go, hey, here's the tabs and the things we were just showcasing on this demo. If you want to explore these articles, or you want to go play around with our tools, or hey, I've got some prompt packs I was just featuring and you want to be able to download those, doing this would allow you to just quickly, shove it over Zoom or follow it up in an email, and they can see whether that's 5 browser tabs or entire folder structures, and you've got like 30 of them. So that's another quick feature. I mean, I could go for days, but let me just pause for a second. Curtis has his hand up. What do you got, Curtis?
I'm just going to kind of go back up to the beginning. I mean, really, the bigger vision here is a productivity tool to add to our toolkit to be effectively just quicker, better, faster, manage the chaos. I don't think any part of the C stands for chaos, right? Although that does apply. Just manage all this stuff.
CAIO definitely doesn't have chaos, but you know,
Yeah.
welcome to the AI revolution.
So I think, I'm going to have to go back and replay the nuances and the details, but effectively at a higher level, we can go into Arc, we can configure workspaces, so to speak, based on project themes. We could even actually initiate a project for a team and send out a set of links that correspond to our workspace, so to speak, in a browser context. With the corresponding links. I'm also hearing you say that these workspaces, and I'm calling them workspaces, maybe there's a better term for it, effectively can be set up where
they call them spaces right here.
Sorry?
They call them spaces.
Okay, good. So that's a good coincidence. But the main thinking I want to kind of step away where I look at this after the fact is this is another way that we could organize our own day-to-day workspace so we can not be overwhelmed by our own chaos, I think I would say, because I have browsers with tons of stuff, but they're all intermingled, and that's messy. Seems like this is a good way to segregate and separate those. And then equally important, configure to launch various tools inside of the workspace. Is that a reasonable summary?
Yeah, and I like to think about the spaces as where we all do different things, right? There's times where you're like, this is my personal life, and I'm traveling, I'm planning, our weekend vacation, or whatever. We got to go to a wedding, and I want to keep all that stuff on like a personal space. And there's times where you need to be signed into multiple Google accounts. I mean, when I go to sign into Google, I've got like 11 different accounts, and some of them are not even mine. They're clients. They're, I can sign into our CEOs if I need to, because I need to do a verification code and he's busy all day. So there's different contexts that we all need, and having that ability to switch spaces, it doesn't, again, when you start to get into short keys, the way I use Command T, and then I can just tab and search for something, I don't have to track what and where I stored those. Whereas before I used to be like, this browser with these tabs is for this project. Now I can be like, the spaces are the equivalent, and I only really need one window. In the case of what you're seeing here, I actually have a couple different windows open just so I can showcase a little bit more of what the feature set is. But ordinarily, I'm really only operating out of one window, and I have multiple versions of those spaces. And each one is either contextually a different use case of my life or a different project that I'm working on. So yeah, it's certainly a nice to have.
The only other quick follow-on is I didn't really kind of grasp what you were doing when you said, oh, I could launch Perplexity and then I could have the dual screen and then I could launch ChatGPT. So it sounded like I missed that. Maybe I'll go back and watch it, but
no, I'm happy to slow that down for a second and go back through that. So number one, if I was to tell you my advice, right, go get Arc, test it out, arc.net. Head over to the profile settings, switch from default of Google to Perplexity. Okay. First step. Now in a PC, it'll be Control T, Mac, it'll be Command T. Anytime you search for, what color is the sky, and you hit enter, it's going to invoke Perplexity. So that's sort of your first step. Then the other one that I referenced is if you go into the Max features in there and turn on ChatGPT, again, you hit Control T to pull up the spotlight bar, and you type in Chat GPT and hit tab. Now it turns green, and again, you're able to do a search. And then on top of that, if you were to right click and add split view, this is just a different way to do it. I've now created, oh, that didn't work. Add split view. Okay, it's got the right-hand side. Now it's nothing's in there, but if I was to go to Prompt Vault, now I've loaded up Prompt Vault on one tab, or one side rather, and I've pulled up Perplexity on the left, but that could have been ChatGPT, and you can, depending on what you're doing here. I literally, when we're doing stats, when we're doing the challenge, I will have 4 tabs, not tabs, sorry, what are we calling these split views? Okay, they're basically tabs, but they're all like lined up in columns. And I'll load 4 columns, and I'll have one that's Twitter, one that's LinkedIn, one that's YouTube, and one that's Facebook. And I don't need to see those pages in a vertical, like I don't need to see a lot of real estate. As soon as you go into this version, it kind of gets you into a mobile, version of the page. And then I can see and take screenshots at 15-minute intervals and say, okay, this is how many people we had on the stream at this time interval. And here's another one, and here's another one. So we can kind of like track multiple things. If I was doing stock market analysis and I wanted to have a couple different tickers live on things, I could set up a custom split view for those. So that there's lots of different ways. And if I wanted to, I think up here, you can switch this to say, convert to a horizontal. So maybe what you're reading needs a little bit more top and bottom, or that's just how your brain operates, depending on the way the page loads. So hopefully that's answers your question, Curtis. Somebody in the chat, Lee, if you want to bring anything important to my attention, I was noticing there's somebody who's asking about the Thursday call earlier.
Yeah, I took care of that.
You did? Okay, good. Anyway, those Thursdays calls, they may not be cascading all the way down the calendar, but we've got to get those replicating, because I think we just probably only popped up one of them. But it'll be Thursday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, and they're going to be live streamed inside the Facebook group for now.
Last question is from Vidya. Is there a concept of bookmarks in ARC? And I believe there is.
Yeah, I think the idea with this left sidebar, and I'll go back down here. So if I open up some tabs and I say, okay, here's just something that I'm working on, I don't know, podcast workflow. Okay, so this is a project for, an over the shoulder, what we're doing. I think I used this in a training session a couple weeks ago on one of our prompting calls. If I said, this is something I want to be able to call all the time, I would just simply drag this up above that line. There's the little, see where it says clear. So as long as I go above that clear line, now that's the equivalent of a bookmark, and it'll just stay kind of open. Now, if I click minus on this, it's going to close the resource, as in it's not openly active on, my browser, but it's still there permanently anchored above the line. Whereas if I take this search with Perplexity and I just close it, it's just gone, right? I mean, I can still pull it up from the history, but these are kind of the equivalent of running session tabs. And then this would be the equivalent of your browser bookmarks, where you can organize them and put them in folders and so on and so forth.
Segovia, I installed it while we were on this call, and it did ask to import, and I selected something to import, and it just shows up as imported book
And
links.
do your bookmarks show up in the top, or?
Yeah, imported from, how do I spread this separate? Imported from Chrome, it shows it under.
Okay, and it's just one folder, like, that's got everything underneath there, or does it
It's
keep
got
the
all my
nested
folders, and each folder has its sub files or subfolders if they had a deeper tree.
Okay, great. And those are going to be above that horizontal line then. So they'll be anchored,
So it's open. I shouldn't have. Yes, it's above the horizontal line.
Yeah. So then it's great. Those are what they're considering bookmarks.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Segovia, I want to throw some a curveball in here. So as I said, I'm trying to get my brain around ARC. And I've also been using a browser replacement called Wavebox, and I'll throw that into chat. I don't know if anybody has played with that or not. The really neat thing about Wavebox is that you can run all your desktop apps inside there as well. So it's more of a desktop replacement. So you can have browser windows in it, you can have your desktop apps in there, you can create workflows, you can create workspaces. I'm not using Wavebox heavily. They've baked a lot of AI stuff into it now. It's also built on Chrome. It also supports all the Chrome extensions that are out there in the world. Just sharing another tool that I like, because I can run Slack in there. I can run Infusionsoft desktop version in there, things like that. So it gives me a more universal single place that can house both browsers and apps. So if you haven't checked it out, if you're venturing out to check the Arc browser, you may
Yeah, if you're
want to
new and you want to like take a look at these different things, you might find that one just what Andrew was saying, left brain, right brain, maybe just one just organically feels like a better fit. Sometimes you got to try on a few pairs of shoes before you get the one that's comfortable to walk in all day. Um, I'll definitely have to see a little bit more about that. And if you
it's
know
and it's
more about it, and you get like some muscle memory in there, maybe you
yeah,
want to teach
and
that
it's
on a
and it
future
and it's
call.
Mac, PC, Linux. And we do have a question from Sherry at the top of the hour about the link for the Thursday call. Can we repost that? And I'm not sure where to grab that.
Yeah,
So
so all I can say at the moment is slash Facebook. So it'll be streamed inside of the Facebook group. So that's the Using AI at Work Facebook group, the same place that we do the monthly 3-day challenge. So if you are just wanting to make sure you don't miss it, write down for the time being, either 9 a.m. or Pacific or 12 Eastern, 12 noon Eastern, and just show up in the Facebook group, and we'll be streaming it there.
great. Thanks, Adobe.
Yeah. And the idea with that is it's right now today, I've only focused on one tool, and I've gone deep for an hour with Q&A and kind of showcasing and highlighting what I'm using the browser for. Whereas on the Thursday call, we'll probably go into 5 or 6 different tools, and those tools will change and evolve as we move forward. Yes, it is in Facebook, not in Zoom, because it's primarily an external marketing call to bring people who are brand new, have never experienced our brand before. But everybody who is in the Chief Officer program or in the AI Insider is welcome to join them. And we will be posting more links in the community that'll make it convenient for you to just RSVP and click one link and get over there. Yes, you can attend. Everybody can attend. You are all welcome. It's just that it's yeah.
And it's being recorded. So if you
It's
can't
being
catch
recorded,
it, if you
and
don't
we
catch
will
it
be getting
live,
those replays in the community as well. So,
right.
yeah. She says no, Facebook isn't an option. I know some people don't use Facebook. But we've just started to get big enough to go, hey, we're only streaming the 3-day challenge into Facebook, and wait, there's nobody actually inside of like these people don't even have a Facebook account. I actually have a call that I'm 1 minute late for. I hope that whoever I'm supposed to be speaking to knows that I'm on this call and is even here, in which case I will see you in the other meeting. But I have to politely end the meeting now. So it was wonderful. Thank you for your time and your questions. And if you want to join me again tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 11:30 Eastern, we'll be doing prompting inside the community.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Segovia.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.